Hello, it's time for another interview. Today, I'm interviewing my colleague, Beth Weld-Wallis, right? That's how you say it?
You got it. Yes.
Weld-Wallis, yes. I only ever have to see it in print, and I just call you Beth. So, Beth works with me in Wyoming Public Schools, although we are not in the same building since I'm at the junior high and she is at the elementary level at Parkview. And she teaches the third grade, and she is very excited to share her vast knowledge of the third grade learner with all of you. Woohoo! All right, so Beth, how about, and I should explain, video is being wonky for us, so you just get to look at my face today and listen to Beth. It's kind of like the radio or a podcast call in.
Yes.
Anyway, so Beth, tell us a little bit about how you came to this career in education. Like, how did it start? What were your inspiration? And then how did you end up in a classroom in Wyoming Public Schools?
Yes. So it's going to sound cliche, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher in third grade. My favorite grade that I ended up teaching. I adored my third grade teacher. And I said it then, and school was always a place that I felt comfortable and confident, thanks to a lot of great educators in my life. And so if you ever teach third grade and have a student say they want to be a teacher, take them seriously, give them encouragement and nods in the right direction. So since then, I got my degree in general and special education at Roberts Wesleyan College. After that, I kind of floundered for a little bit, didn't apply for a job right away, did a little time teaching with the Peace Corps, came back and got connected with Teach for America. And so I taught in Oklahoma for 2 years. Then I bounced to my favorite city. I don't know if anyone's a New York City fan. So I lived in New York City, taught there at a charter school for 2 years, Lighthouse Metropolitan. And then I took a break, a year to get my master's degree at Teachers College. And I finished strong in New York at New York Public Schools, which was a really interesting change from the charter. And I am now on my second year in Wyoming Public Schools at Parkview, as you mentioned.
Nice. My students tend to do their homework. I only ever give the teacher's name and grade level that they teach and like district and stuff. And
Yes.
And someone must have done some Googling because they want to know, how did you feel about being a cool teacher?
Oh, no. They did do their homework.
They did.
It helps that I have a terribly uncommon last name, so I'm pretty easy to find. I was totally flattered and honored. That came about from our Team 21 coordinator, who had students nominate teachers. So my little Addison Crandall, who, if you watch the video, you can see, quiet as a mouse. She was the one who recommended me. And it was just like a really great time to celebrate, and the kids were very excited about cameras coming in, and they got that little treat. So I was honored, to say the least. And if anyone gets the opportunity to do that in the future, take it.
Aw, that's adorable. And now I did watch the video.
Okay.
And I took mental notes like, these are my future 8th graders.
Yeah, so true. Yes.
Aw. All right, let's dig into some of the questions about writing and how your classroom is set up. So
love it.
Many want to know, how is a 3rd grade classroom, particularly yours, obviously, how is it set up for, what does a daily schedule look like for you? And how do you, do you use traditional desks? Do you like flexible seating? What does it look like?
Yes. So I'll give you my COVID answer and a non-COVID answer.
Perfect.
So in the year of COVID, it's unfortunately rows and separated individual desks. It's just, as best we can, we're trying to keep students separated and safe. We definitely break the rules a little occasionally, but we're all wearing masks. In a typical year, I have groups, and so they're sitting either next to or across from their turn and talk partner. And usually their turn and talk partner is the same for reading and writing. Just way more conducive to collaboration and having think partners. And as part of the writers workshop that we do in my classroom, the share, we always end with a share. So you just want to make sure that kids are feeling comfortable with their table mates and just getting that opportunity to collaborate with one another.
Yeah. Nice. So as far as a writing curriculum, does
Yes.
Wyoming use a specific writing curriculum for elementary?
Yes, we do. We use the Teachers College, which I'm lucky coming out of there, Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop. So currently we're on the first narrative unit in writing. And let me just preface all this by saying, so I'm in my 8th year. I'd say for my first 4 years, I was a pretty abysmal writing teacher in 3rd grade. It was easy to have that be the subject that you skip or don't get to. But since using this curriculum, and I really buy into it, so you have to find a curriculum that you really love because kids can sense that. But since then, I feel like I have a much more structured, I do a 10-minute main lesson every single day. And then the kids are writing for a good 20 to 30 solid minutes. So that's just like our sacred kids doing the heavy lifting, actually writing in their notebooks every day.
Nice. That leads me to, there have been questions. Every single elementary teacher that I've interviewed has talked about like getting a writing curriculum. And my students, at the secondary level, we're not given a writing curriculum. Ooh. So my students, my undergraduates, are really interested in how much say do you have in the writing curriculum that's chosen, and how much flexibility do you have to be able to say, well, this doesn't work for me, so I'm going to tweak it?
Okay, great questions. We did not have a say in this curriculum. I say that knowing that I've only been with the district, this is my 2nd year. So I'm not sure what the planning stages look like or what collaboration among staff and faculty happened before I came. But so when I got there, it's like, this is the curriculum you're using, which I had taught with in New York City. So I was like, yes, please. So not flexible in choosing the curriculum, but lots of flexibility with what format you present to the students. So in addition to this 10-minute main lesson, I provide lots of outlines for students, I found especially for struggling students, either sentence starters or just modified so they aren't feeling overwhelmed by the amount they have to write, something as simple as giving them paper with spaced out lines as opposed to notebooks, or paper that provides space for illustrations can make a big difference in just their mindset, putting that in front of them and then feeling confident that they can do it, as opposed to a college ruled paper and saying, write a whole page kind of thing.
Yeah, that blank page can be super intimidating.
Yes, totally.
For even adults, even me in my grad work, that blank page can be kind of scary.
Right.
So do you do a lot of, is it all individual writing, or do you have students do some collaborative things, or what does that look like?
Yeah, when I saw that was one of the questions, it made me rethink. I'm like, like how right now it is very individual. Especially for this narrative unit, when they hear me say a million times, it's a true story about you. So less collaboration as far as the actual writing process, because they need to be writing about themselves. But one unit I think is really conducive to that is the informative unit. So when they're doing, and that's when reading ties with it, they were like research, they're in groups and they're researching an animal of their choice. So they do a lot of collaboration, like gathering their research, and then their actual writing piece might look different from one another, but they've done a bulk of the heavy lifting as a group for finding those facts. So
That's really cool.
Yeah, persuasive can be really fun / opinion can be fun to do as groups, because then it can turn into kind of a little competition of like who can come up with the better arguments. Not in third, but in fifth grade they do like a chocolate milk or no chocolate milk, and I was very impressed with the arguments that chocolate milk found to try to beat out white milk.
That's funny. That's
Yes.
good. No wonder
Yes.
they're coming to me with, at this point I'm starting to see that we have some uniformity at this point now,
Ooh,
like in the district.
yeah.
It's like it's starting. I think I saw a little bit of it last year, but already this year there are kids who are like, they're used to having a writing notebook now. Like they're used to,
Yes.
and so I'm seeing that we're having some of this, you know, it's like the, what do they call it? Vertical planning.
Yes.
We don't do a ton of vertical planning,
Right.
but it's so great when it really does click into place vertically that way.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because, in elementary, we can feel a little disconnected from intermediate. But even I felt it just with my third graders who in second grade had experienced this pilot program for the first time last year. Like, their beginning of year work is leaps and bounds above my third graders' beginning of year work last year, just because they're like, oh, yeah, I know this. Like, this is what my teacher did last year.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think I guess I don't know much about the intermediate either, but I'm actually interviewing Jake Downing next week. So hopefully
Nice.
I learned some more things. But it's interesting because many of us start with narrative and then move to informational and then move to opinion. Well, at the elementary, it's opinion. Once you get up into secondary, it's argumentative, claim, evidence, reasoning.
Right.
Because you have to have a counterclaim. But the kids get used to that pattern, like last year I said, okay, so we're going to be writing evidence or arguments, and one kid goes, so like claim, evidence, and reasoning. And I was like, yes! Yes! Because they do it in science too. So I was so excited about that.
Perfect.
Do you use mentor texts then? Like, did you look at some personal narratives before your kids wrote personal narratives? Like, is that something that the curriculum that you teach uses?
Yeah, if I have my little books prepared, I'll just send you a screenshot or something afterwards. But
okay.
For third grade, it's actually interesting that they use a narrative called Come On Rain by Karen Hess.
Okay.
And I love it just because it's definitely rich with the things that you want to emphasize with kids, including describing words and having characters that talk. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to get third graders to have dialogue in their story, but once they get a hang of it, then they take off running. So yeah, just a beautiful book, really rich and like so many layers. Almost, I'm like, maybe it should be a little upper elementary, a little above third grade. In fifth grade for the narrative unit, when I was teaching, they used Michelle Obama's memoirs, which was really, at least for one lesson, they read like the excerpt from like the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
And that was just sweet, because kids their ears perk up when they hear her name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for informative, we have one called Deadliest Animals.
Ooh.
And then in reading, we use Because of Winn-Dixie, but there's a lot of transfer over talking about, the amazing Kate DiCamillo's writing style. She's like the perfect author. If you ever want to like have a lesson about author's craft, she's just like the penultimate like author to use.
I agree with that. My sixth grade son has read everything by her.
Has he?
His fourth grade teacher read Because of Winn-Dixie, and he came home and he said, this is my new favorite author. So I had to buy everything by her, which I already had quite a few things.
Yes.
But huge fan.
Good.
Yes.
Have you done Raimi Nightingale? I know this is an aside, but I love Raimi Nightingale so much.
I don't think so. That will have to be one that we do.
Yes.
Nice. I do love Kate DiCamillo. She's an amazing writer. She's great.
Yeah.
It's a little like, I've used excerpts from her in 8th grade,
Uh-huh.
but like as a read aloud, it's a little low by the
Yes,
time you get to
yes.
8th grade. But I have kids who ask for the books that their teachers
Right.
read aloud to them in elementary, like that. The chapter. Can I read those chapter books? Heck yes, you can read those
Go
chapter
for
books.
it.
Do it.
Yes. Yes.
So
It's always fun to revisit those ones.
yeah, yeah. So in 3rd grade, are you self-contained? Do you teach all the subjects?
I do. Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Do you then do writing across the curriculum like you do informational writing with another subject, or is it just the writing belongs in the writing block?
I definitely try to make connections across. It's so easy with reading and writing, just especially when we're paired using both the reader and writer's workshop. So
Mhm.
they align. So when we're doing something and reading, I'm like, oh, guess what? In fact, after each reading lesson, I have my students like do their little exit ticket and they track their progress. And the one day the kids sometimes get confused because we do a good amount of writing during reading. And they're like, is this writing or reading? I'm like, yeah, I know. Even though we spend the bulk of our time reading. But um, with COVID this year and kind of the graciousness of our principal allowing us to have more outdoor time to get our masks off and get outside. We don't have a ton of time for science and social studies, but I think it's so easy to incorporate those two with like self-reflections about moments in history. And for science, as you mentioned, doing like the scientific experiments and just writing out their hypotheses and
Yeah.
writing out their observations. So it's the sooner they can see that writing is not self-contained, that this is something that could help you in all areas, the better, because you just want to get rid of that stigma of I'm a bad writer and like I can't do it, and just really bolster their confidence. We're all
Yes.
about growth mindset in my classroom.
I love that growth mindset. That's hopefully my class hears that growth mindset. If you guys haven't picked up anything on growth mindset, Google it.
Do
It's
it.
it's awesome. We try to do
Yes.
that I try to model that in my classrooms too.
Oh,
So, let's see. I have a lot of questions about being a 3rd grade teacher.
okay.
There are many students have asked about the pressure or how 3rd grade is a critical year.
Yes.
And there's the law about
Right.
reading, and they would love your insight and thoughts on all of those things.
Okay. Um, so I'll for some of this, I'll like make it very clear that this is like personal opinion, just based on my experience. So the more I learned about reading and what a detrimental year 3rd grade was, the more I was inspired to, that's why I got my master's as a reading specialist, because I was like, my gosh, like this is the year, if they don't make those gains, then reading will be a challenge for them forever. So that's why I chose 3rd grade. And that's why I'm so motivated by growth mindset, because I never share students' reading levels at the beginning of the year. It's all about like, how much did you grow? And for writing, that's so tangible. They do their little on demands at the beginning of the year where I give them just write a true story about you, like the first or second day of school. And now after a whole unit, we're going to pull that back out and they can see how much they've flourished. So that being said, with this law, the reading law, I do not agree with it. I strongly believe that if retention is going to take place and be beneficial, it needs to happen before 3rd grade, like K1, 2 at most. By 3rd grade, holding a child back, I think the negative side effects outweigh the positive, especially with their self-concept about how they can be a successful student or not. And we haven't quite felt it yet, though. So last year was supposed to be the first year. Everything got called off. And so I have seen Oklahoma was actually doing a very similar law, the like 8 years ago that I was in Oklahoma, that same year when I taught third grade there, they did this, like, if you don't pass the test, you stay in third grade. And what I saw was parents stepped up, and parents for students that were in danger of that consequence, they advocated for their students, and so we were able to support a lot of the students going to fourth grade, knowing that they would still have challenges, but with the staff to support them. And that's one thing Wyoming really kicks butt with, is having that support staff. Like, the special education teachers I've worked with here are phenomenal.
They are so good. Yeah.
Yes. So if I say anything about, like, third grade, when you get those students who are low, especially post-COVID, where, I mean, they've been home and maybe not keeping up with their schoolwork, it's just keep a positive attitude and just frame it of, like, how much can they grow, and make sure that's the message you're sending to them. And I think this law sends the wrong message, and I'm hopeful that I don't think it was educators who put that in place. So I'm hopeful that lawmakers will hear educators and parents and students, and there'll be revisions to that.
I think this is a great place to also remind my students too that it's almost impossible to have a passion for teaching and not have some sort of political engagement. Like,
yes,
it's too hard. There's too many, everything with our job is tied to the government. So it's hard not to find things to take a stand. And I think it's really important for those of us who are passionate, and hopefully that would be all teachers, but to make sure that we speak up and that we contact, who we need to contact in Lansing about these things, because I've written in to Lansing as a parent, saying this is not right. Everybody knows retention is not ever really the solution. Like, kids need help, remediation, but not retention. So they just want to do the thing that costs the least amount of money. And so it's really important, I think, for my students to hear you say that as well, because I think it's really important to figure out how can you get active, especially when you are at that level teaching. When you're a third grade teacher, you're the expert. So they need to hear from you. So I think that's great. I'm glad you said something like that.
And along the same lines is that what these times have made us realize is, like, a bigger picture of, like, state testing in general. Like, what benefits are there for students to do these high stakes testing at such a young age? And I think it's the first time that we've actually been like, well, why do we do that kind of testing and put them through it? Because kids feel that stress at a young age. And I think I bought into it because they tied it to teacher evaluations. And now I'm stepping back and, like, why do I feel so peaceful at the beginning of this year? Oh, like, maybe it's because we don't have M-STEP looming over us. Or I think there's better ways to evaluate kids and still make them feel confident.
Yes, I 100% with you on that one. Okay, let's see. What else? Wait, where did it go? I color code all of my questions so that cool. I know whether they go into, what kinds of things, what kind of strategies do you use to make sure students are prepared to go on to fourth grade? Like, what are some of the fourth grade things that you think, we're all preparing our students to go on, right? Like,
yes.
I think of high school when I'm teaching my 8th graders.
Yes.
You're preparing for that intermediate age.
Totally.
So what sorts of things, what does that look like for you?
Is it okay if I take, like, a social emotional perspective, or were they hoping for this to be, like, content specific?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, Wyoming is, like, we're in this wonderful position of adopting the social emotional curriculum called Ruler. It comes out of Yale, so that's some more homework for your students if they feel so ambitious. So one way I prepare them is just like how to identify their feelings. That is the curriculum in a snapshot, is that there's something called the mood meter where students are placing themselves in one of 4 quadrants based on if they're feeling high energy, low energy, or pleasant and unpleasant. And we make those shifts throughout the day, and we just have really open conversations of the red is clearly the highly unpleasant, high energy. So when they come in and are able to articulate that, that's just a life skill, right? To be able to discuss feelings and problem solve. So I'm really, especially as I've taught a little bit longer, I'm really prioritizing those kind of skills because they are always going to have to be working alongside peers, at least as long as they're K through 12. So to be able to teach them how to get along in the midst of conflict, like not pushing the conflict under the floor, but like under the rug, but saying like, okay, when we have conflict, what do we do? So I'm hoping that transfers from teacher to teacher, especially once that becomes a district-wide policy. And as far as just like when I think more academically, I hope to prepare them for 4th grade by making them independent thinkers. I don't know if you've already talked with your class about Jessica Minahan.
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. Her keynote speech at the beginning of the year has just continued to like resonate with me, specifically teaching your students how perfect.
I bought her book while she was doing the keynote.
How could you not? She's so talented, and she's so clearly like seen it all. So just for me, I've really stepped back and be like, how am I teaching my students not to rely on me? Because it's so easy as a teacher to want to be the constant helper. But in my resumes, and I'd always be like, I'm going to facilitate. But I don't think I really embrace that till this year. So instead of like looking at their paper when they call me over, like Jessica Minahan says, you need to like look at them and say like, what do you need help with? And why do you think you need help with that? So that my classroom starts to run without me. That would be the best kind of classroom.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. Like I as I went through like her strategies as well, like you want them, it's kind of like parenting. You want them to not need you. You want them to be able to do these things on their own. And so I've found myself trying to break some really bad habits this year of swooping in to tell them what to do rather than just today. I was having my students do a writing about, what allusions does this author use in the book we're reading, and why did you think she includes them? And I had a couple kids. It's always, and I know who's going to do it, and they raise their hand. And what do I do? I'm like, well, what do the instructions say?
Yes.
And, so that's my newest. What do the directions in the front say that I just went over? Like, what do they say? Okay, so which part is tripping you up? And usually they answer their own question.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, never mind, I get it.
Yes. Yeah, I've started to use a phrase like, oh, look, you didn't need help. Or, oh, wow, you figured it out all by yourself, kind of.
Yep. I've started saying, whoa, you got it, just from reading the directions.
Yep.
Let me know if you need anything else.
Yes.
So, I really appreciated, that was some of the best professional development I think we've had.
Easily, hands down.
Yeah. All right, so I'm trying to honor everybody's time. So I will ask some of the traditional end of wrapping up of the interview. Everybody always wants to know, what is the biggest challenge for you as a 3rd grade teacher? Or as just a teacher in general?
Yes. I think the biggest challenge that I'm working on this year is having a sense of humor. It sounds cliche, but what the days I found myself like kind of downtrodden, it's because I didn't bring a lightness to it. So especially in 3rd grade, as some of your questions already hinted at, there's a lot of content, and there is a drastic switch from second grade to like, we're working most of the day, and there's not as many breaks, and you're learning multiplication, division, you're writing paragraphs instead of just some sentences. So there's so many shifts that take place. And I found that when I'm just a little lighter and a little be able to laugh at myself with the kids and just really focus on the positive. And that's what I say to my students. I like actively say out loud, like, I want to focus on the positive right now. Like, how can we do that? And then having them change their mindsets. Yeah, just find at the end of every day, stop yourself and say, what was the best part of my day, or what was one part that made me laugh? As a teacher, it's really important because it's a stressful profession. 50% of people burn out in the first 5 years. I think that's still an accurate statistic. So you have to be able to step back and appreciate the joy that are children. They are just wonderful. So take them, love them.
That was my next question. What's the biggest joy that you find in your job?
I love when kids have the light bulb moments. Like, there's nothing better than seeing a kid do the ooh, or just seeing how their minds work. It's just fascinating to me. And they're such, like, I think they're the nicest little beings. I would take working with students and children over adults any day. Sorry to all adults everywhere. I think they just have this energy and enthusiasm for life that I want to like keep lit. I just want them to know how wonderful that curiosity is. So yeah, the most joyful part of my job is clearly the students.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure all teachers say that, but
Right.
I am confident that the students in Wyoming are more special than everybody else.
I'm telling you, this year in particular, I am just bragging on my students, and I would be candid with you if I wasn't feeling that way. But wow.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree with you. We just have some of the most rad kids ever in our district. They're just
so
great.
If any of your students are looking for a district to apply to post-graduation, come.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, that brings me to the way we love to wrap up these interviews.
Oh.
What kind of advice do you have for they're in a 3690 class, so it's a 300 level class. They still have some ways to go. They still have student teaching and stuff to go, but they're already, a lot of them are thinking about, what should I do as a new teacher, or job hunt type things, or so advice.
Okay. Advice. Look for jobs. Start finding districts you're interested in before you graduate. That I did, as I mentioned before, I didn't do that well. I didn't even have a clue of like where I wanted to start stepping into the field. And I almost didn't stick with it because I was like, oh, I'm not going to get a job. No. So find a district you like. Another big recommendation is find a mentor that first year. Find someone, and it doesn't have to necessarily, probably whatever district you end up in, the person will be assigned. But boy, I've had some phenomenal mentors that just like inspirational people. So you might wait a few weeks to find the person based on what you see going on. But man, it's Mickey Lemieux at my school. I don't know if you know her. She's just wonderful. In Oklahoma, I had a wonderful woman named Dr. Grace. Those are just people, especially ones who have been in the field for a while. So they're in it, right? You need people who are teachers for life.
Yes.
Yeah, as mentors. And as far as just being a first year teacher, like by focusing on the positive, your kids will sense that. Like children, whether they can articulate it and explain it or not, they can sense how you're feeling and your feelings toward them. So be very careful with the words you choose and the body language you use, because kids internalize that. And so as their teacher, you have such an important role, and just take it seriously. I think, I mean, if they're at this point in their education, your students, I believe that they clearly do. So just keep carrying that on. I think teaching is the best profession. So
I do too.
I'm biased, but yeah, it excites me to be thinking about upcoming teachers. It's kids need that kind of passion, and yeah.
Yeah, I can honestly say that teaching this course
Yeah.
this semester has like also lit a fire for
Mhm.
me, just to see the
Yeah.
enthusiasm. Like it gives me, and all my students are probably now going, um, but it does. It gives me hope that we
Yes.
have really good thinkers and people
Mhm.
who love kids coming up.
Yes.
And they talk about this teacher shortage and who would want to be a teacher. And there are people. I have 20 individuals who want to love students and teach them, and so
Yes.
that makes me feel good.
Me too.
So,
Good to hear.
all
Uh,
right. I'm going to stop recording, but you can stay on a minute if you want.
Okay.
All right. So everybody, thanks for listening, and I'm turning off the recording now so that I can talk to Beth.